Previously, in Part 1, what started as an ordinary delivery turned into something far more sinister. Sam Parker, a veteran USPS driver, arrived at the Dawson house, only to find two young girls home alone, hungry, and strangely quiet. Their father, Darren, returned with a flimsy excuse, convincing the police that everything was fine. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Then, he found the note. "We are girls. Call 911. That desperate message, scrawled in a child's shaky handwriting, changed everything. When Sam called for help again, Darren snapped. He locked his wife inside, held her hostage, and armed himself. By the time the police arrived, it was almost too late. Now, in Part 2, the full truth comes to light. What was really happening behind closed doors? What dark secrets had Darren been hiding? And just how close had this family come to losing everything? Buckle up, because this story is far from over.
The night had settled over Pineville, Kentucky, casting long shadows along the quiet streets. The town was still, but for one man, the weight of the day's events made it impossible to find peace. Sam Parker, a dedicated USPS driver, had never imagined that his routine deliveries would lead him to the heart of a harrowing rescue. Just hours ago, he had saved twin girls, Maya and Lily, along with their mother, Karen Dorson, from a terrifying ordeal that could have ended in tragedy. It had all started with a single package, one that bore a desperate plea scribbled in a child's handwriting. "We are girls. Call 911. Sam had acted on instinct. He had called the authorities, but when the response was delayed, he had taken matters into his own hands. What he found inside the house still haunted him. The fear in the twins' wide eyes, the suffocating sense of danger that lingered in the air, and their mother's trembling voice as she pleaded for help. The girls had clung to him as though he were their only hope, and perhaps, at that moment, he was. By the time the police had arrived, chaos had already unfolded. Karen's husband, Darren Dorson, had been taken down, leaving behind more questions than answers. The nightmare should have ended there. The family was safe, the immediate threat eliminated. And yet, something wasn't right. The package that had set this entire chain of events into motion still sat in Sam's van, waiting to be delivered. When the officers searched through its contents, they found Karen's personal documents, her identification, financial records, and other papers that, for some reason, had been sent to her old address instead of her current one. Karen had been confused at first, but then realization struck her. "This was our house," she had whispered, her voice barely audible. "The one we sold last year." The officers exchanged wary glances, but none of them spoke immediately. Sam had felt a chill run through him as Karen continued. "Darren's friend was living there. At least, that's what he told me. I never met him. Darren handled everything." That single revelation had changed everything. If the package had been sent to her old house, if her husband's mysterious friend had been living there, then what did that mean? More importantly, why had Darren kept it from her? Sam hadn't been able to shake the feeling that there was something much deeper at play. The rescue had been just the beginning. As he drove through the streets later that evening, his mind wouldn't rest. He couldn't stop thinking about the house, about the documents, about the why behind it all. What was Darren really involved in? And had the real danger truly passed? A sense of foreboding settled over him as he turned onto a dimly lit road. He wasn't sure yet what he had stumbled into, but one thing was certain. The past wasn't finished with Karen and her daughters. Not yet. The hum of the engine filled the silence inside Sam Parker's USPS van as he navigated the winding roads of Pineville. The streets, now painted in the fading hues of dusk, had grown quieter as the town settled in for the night. The weight of the day pressed heavily on his shoulders, exhaustion creeping into his bones, yet his mind refused to rest. He had spent hours delivering packages, a routine he had performed countless times, but today had been anything but ordinary. Images of Karen and the girls clung to him like shadows. Maya and Lily's terrified faces as they clung to him for safety, Karen's trembling hands as she tried to hold herself together. He had seen fear before, but there had been something different about this. Something more than just desperation. There had been secrets buried within those walls. The dashboard clock read 7:50 p.m. He had only a few more stops to make, but the longer he drove, the harder it became to ignore the nagging feeling in his gut. Something wasn't right. The story wasn't finished. The abrupt ringing of his phone startled him from his thoughts. His hands tightened on the wheel as he glanced at the illuminated screen. Dave, his supervisor. He sighed, pressing the hands-free button. "Sam, where are you?" Dave's voice filled the van, a mixture of concern and exhaustion. "Just finishing up the last few deliveries," Sam replied, rubbing a hand over his face. "It's been a day. We heard about what happened at the Dorson house," Dave continued. "The police station contacted us. They told us about your involvement in the incident." Sam exhaled slowly, gripping the wheel. What you did was incredibly brave," Dave interrupted. A flush of discomfort crept up Sam's neck. He had never been the kind of man who sought out praise. He had just done what needed to be done. "I just did what anyone would have," he said quietly. "That's where you're wrong," Dave insisted. "Not everyone would have noticed something was off. Not everyone would have acted on it." There was a brief pause before he continued. "The station manager wants to speak with you first thing tomorrow morning. Can you come in before your shift?" Sam nodded out of habit, then realized Dave couldn't see him. "Yeah, what time?" "Be here by 7. "Got it." And Sam, "Yeah. Don't worry about rushing back tonight. We got 24-hour security at the facility, so just drop off the van and keys when you're done. Get some rest." Rest. The word felt foreign to him now. "Will do. Thanks, Dave." The call ended, and silence settled in the van once more. Sam exhaled, staring out at the darkened street ahead of him. The words of his supervisor should have reassured him, but they didn't. If anything, they only reminded him that whatever had happened today had been real. He was being recognized for something he hadn't even had time to process yet. But that wasn't what mattered to him. What mattered was whether or not Karen and the girls were truly safe. Pushing those thoughts aside, he refocused on the task at hand. There were still a few packages left to deliver. And no matter how much his mind raced, Sam Parker was nothing if not dedicated to his job. The nights stretched long and heavy as Sam continued his route. Yet his mind was no longer on the packages in the back of his van. His thoughts kept circling back to Karen and the girls, to the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their voices. And then there was the package, the one that had started it all. Karen's documents, her personal information, sent to the wrong address. Or had it been the right one? His grip tightened around the steering wheel as the memory surfaced. The address on the package had been Karen's old house. She had mentioned it in passing, her voice laced with something unreadable. Darren had arranged for a friend to stay there, a friend Karen had never met. Sam had initially dismissed it. The police had gone there already, hadn't they? They would have checked it out. They would have found anything suspicious. But something inside him refused to let it go. He slowed the van as the street signs blurred past, his heartbeat suddenly loud in his ears. His next delivery was in the opposite direction. He should have kept driving. He should have ignored the feeling gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Instead, his hands moved before his mind could stop them. He turned onto the street. A familiar unease crawled down his spine as he rolled to a stop across from the house. Even from a distance, he could feel it, the emptiness. The house sat in darkness, its windows hollow and black against the faint glow of the streetlights. A strip of yellow police tape stretched across the front yard, fluttering slightly in the night breeze. The silence was deafening. No movement, no sign of life. It was wrong. Sam shifted in his seat, his eyes scanning every inch of the property. The other houses on the street glowed warmly, signs of life spilling from behind curtains and through doorways. But this house, it looked frozen in time. What had the police found inside? Had they discovered anything at all? More importantly, where was Darren's friend? Sam exhaled, forcing himself to think rationally. The authorities had investigated. If there had been anything urgent, they would have said something, right? And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel, the weight of his exhaustion settling over him. He had a van to return, a meeting in the morning. He had done his part, hadn't he? And yet, he couldn't look away. Minutes ticked by as he sat in his van, staring at the house, waiting for something, though he had no idea what. Eventually, with a reluctant shake of his head, he shifted gears and pulled away. But as he drove off into the night, the house lingered in his mind like a specter, whispering to him that this was far from over. By the time Sam pulled into the USPS facility, exhaustion had settled deep in his bones. The familiar routine of returning his van should have been a relief, a signal that the long day was finally over. But his mind was still racing, his thoughts trapped between the events of the day and the unsettling silence of Karen's old house. He parked in the designated lot behind the loading dock, cut the engine, and let out a slow breath. The fluorescent lights of the facility buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the otherwise quiet space. As he stepped out, the night shift security guard, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a friendly face, greeted him with a knowing look. "Heard about what you did today, Parker," the guard said, crossing his arms. "That was some real heroic stuff." Sam paused, shifting the van keys in his hand. The word heroic didn't sit right with him. He had acted on instinct, done what needed to be done. The idea that people were talking about it made him uncomfortable. "Just doing my job," he muttered, offering a small, tired smile. The guard shook his head. "Nah, plenty of folks would have ignored that note. Most people just go about their day, don't look too close. You saw something was off, and you did something about it. That's different." Sam didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he simply handed over the van keys and signed a return log. As he turned toward the employee parking lot, the full weight of the day pressed down on him. His body ached for rest, his mind begged for sleep. Just a few more minutes, and he'd be home. A hot shower, a soft bed, that was all he needed. He climbed into his car and started the ignition, already picturing the moment he could finally close his eyes. Then his phone buzzed. His heart skipped a beat. He almost ignored it. It was late. Whatever it was could wait until morning. But something inside him told him to look. Reaching for his phone, he glanced at the screen. A message from the police station. His stomach tightened. Why were they contacting him now? His fingers hovered over the screen as his mind raced. It could be routine, maybe just a follow-up about his statement. Maybe nothing at all, but it didn't feel like nothing. Sam hesitated, exhaustion pulling at him, urging him to go home. He had already done more than his part. The authorities were handling the rest. And yet, with a heavy sigh, he tightened his grip on the steering wheel and made his decision. He wasn't going home just yet. The police station was quieter than Sam had expected at this hour. The overhead fluorescent lights cast a cold glow over the tiled floor, and a faint murmur of voices echoed through the hallways. The exhaustion in his limbs made every step feel heavier, but he pushed forward, making his way to the front desk. A young officer looked up from her computer as he approached. "Excuse me," Sam said, his voice rough with fatigue. "I got a message to come in. I'm Sam Parker." Recognition flashed in her eyes. "Ah, Mr. Parker, they're expecting you. Follow me." She led him down a long hallway, the air thick with the smell of old coffee and paperwork. They stopped in front of a small room where two men sat waiting. One of them, an older man with graying hair at his temples, stood as Sam entered. "Mr. Parker," the man said, extending his hand. "Detective Johnson, this is my partner, Detective Rodriguez." Sam shook both their hands before sinking into the chair across from them. His body screamed for sleep, but his mind remained alert. "We appreciate you coming in so late," Johnson continued, sliding a document across the table toward him. "We just need to clarify a few details before we finalize your statement." Sam nodded, straightening in his chair. "Whatever you need." For the next hour, he recounted everything. The package, the frantic message scrawled in a child's handwriting, the eerie silence when he knocked on the Dorson house door, the way Maya and Lily had run to him, their small bodies trembling in fear, the helpless frustration of calling the police and getting no response, the relief and horror as the situation escalated beyond his control. He could still hear the twins' voices in his head. "We are girls. Call 911. Rodriguez jotted notes as he spoke, only interrupting to ask for clarification when necessary. When Sam finally finished, Silence settled over the room. Johnson leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. "You did good, Parker. Those girls might not be alive if not for you." Sam sheathed uncomfortably. He didn't want to be thanked. He wanted to know what happened next. "What about Karen's old house?" he asked, cutting through the pause. "What did you find there?" The two detectives exchanged a glance, and Sam didn't like what he saw in their expressions. Rodriguez was the one to answer. "We sent units to investigate earlier. The house was empty." Sam frowned. "Empty?" Johnson nodded. "Whoever was staying there, they left in a hurry." A chill crept up Sam's spine. He had just been outside that house not long ago, staring at its darkened windows. Who had been inside? How long ago had they fled? "What did you find in there?" he asked again, this time more insistently. Rodriguez closed the file in front of her. "I'm afraid we can't disclose that at this time. The investigation is still ongoing." Some is go tightened. So they had found something they weren't willing to share. He sat back, forcing himself to stay calm. Should Karen and the girls be worried? Johnson hesitated. "We can't say for sure, but for now, we're advising them not to return home." Sam exhaled sharply. He didn't like it. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over. Before he could press further, the door opened. A small voice rang out in the hallway. Maya and Lily. They darted past the officer escorting them, their little feet pounding against the tile floor as they launched themselves into his arms. He caught them both, steadying himself as they clung to him. He felt his chest tighten as relief washed over him. Karen stood nearby, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes warm as she watched the reunion. Sam pulled back slightly, looking between the girls. "Hey, you two, how are you holding up?" "We're okay," Maya mumbled, her face pressed into his shoulder. "But we're hungry." A laugh bubbled in Sam's chest despite the weight of the night. "Well, that's understandable." Karen stepped forward, her voice soft. "Sam, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done." He gave a tired smile. "I'm just glad you're safe." But deep down, the question still lingered. What had the police found in that house? And more importantly, was the danger truly gone? The weight of the night pressed heavily on Sam Parker's shoulders as he stood inside the police station, the exhaustion seeping into every muscle. He had answered every question, signed every document, and relived the events of the day more times than he cared to count. All he wanted now was to go home, crawl into bed, and let the silence take over. But just as he turned toward the exit, a small voice rang out. "Thumb." He barely had time to react before two small figures came barreling toward him. Maya and Lily. The twins threw themselves into his arms, their little hands clutching at his jacket, their faces pressing against him like he was their lifeline. He caught them both, steadying himself as they clung to him, their breath ragged, their bodies still trembling from everything they had been through. He crouched down, wrapping them in a firm but gentle embrace. "Hey, you too," he murmured, his voice softer than he had intended. "You doing okay?" "We are now," Maya mumbled against his shoulder. "But we're hungry." Lily nodded in agreement, sniffling slightly. "We didn't get to eat dinner." Despite the exhaustion dragging at him, Sam felt a small, tired smile tug at the corners of his lips. "Well, that's no good," he said, glancing between them. "You can't be having adventures like today on an empty stomach." The girls giggled weakly, the sound fragile but real. It was the first time since he had met them that they sounded like kids. Karen approached slowly, her face drawn, her body visibly sagging with exhaustion. But there was warmth in her eyes as she took in the sight of her daughters wrapped in Sam's arms. She swallowed hard before speaking. "Sam, I don't even know how to begin to thank you." "You don't have to," he said simply, standing as Maya and Lily still held onto his arms. He hesitated, not entirely sure how to put it into words. "I just did what needed to be done." Karen's lips trembled, but she nodded. "Still, you saved us. Twice." She exhaled slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "If you hadn't noticed that note, if you hadn't acted." Sam didn't let her finish. He had already played out the worst-case scenario in his head too many times. He didn't need her to say it out loud. "They're safe now," he assured her. "That's what matters." But before Karen could respond, An officer stepped forward, his expression grave. "Mrs. Dorson?" Karen stiffened immediately. "Yes." The officer hesitated, then cleared his throat. "We've received confirmation from the hospital." His voice was careful, measured. "Your husband's body has been transferred to the morgue." The air in the room shifted. Karen swayed slightly, her lips parting, but no words came out. Her face turned pale, her expression unreadable. Sam felt Maya and Lily tense beside him, their small hands gripping his jacket just a little tighter, though they didn't yet fully understand the weight of what had just been said. After what felt like an eternity, Karen finally found her voice. I don't want to see him." The officer blinked as if caught off guard. "Ma'am, you don't have to go tonight, but—" "No," Karen said firmly, her voice stronger this time. "Not tonight. The girls need me." She looked down at Maya and Lily, her gaze softening as she brushed her fingers gently over their hair. "They've been through enough," she whispered. "I don't want them to remember their father like that." The officer nodded in understanding. "Of course. Just let us know when you're ready." Karen didn't respond right away. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached out, instinctively pulling her daughters closer. Sam watched as she held them, as if grounding herself in the warmth of their presence. There was a finality in the way she stood, in the way she refused to look back. Darren Dorson was gone, and somehow, Karen knew that was only the beginning of the truths she would have to face. Karen Dorson sat in the dimly lit police station, exhaustion weighing down every part of her. The past 24 hours had shattered the fragile life she had been trying to rebuild, leaving nothing but uncertainty in its wake. She held Maya and Lily close, their small bodies warm against her, but the chill of the unknown loomed over her like a storm cloud. Across from her, the officer cleared his throat, his voice careful, measured. "Mrs. Dorson, I need to be very clear about something. Given what happened tonight and what we found at your old house, we strongly advise against you returning home." Karen swallowed hard, her throat tight. "But it's our home," she whispered, though she already knew the answer. The officer shook his head. "Not anymore." The words struck deep. Karen had already lost Darren, though in truth, she had lost him long before today. But now, she was losing her home too. The place where she had raised her daughters, where their baby pictures still lined the walls, where life had once been simple before it all fell apart. She felt Maya's fingers curl around hers, grounding her. "Then where do we go?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. The officer hesitated. "Do you have any family nearby?" Karen exhaled, shaking her head. "No, my parents passed years ago, and Darren's, well, they made it clear a long time ago that they weren't interested in me or the girls." The officer's face softened. "In that case, we can arrange temporary housing for you." Karen knew what that meant. A shelter, a place full of strangers, uncertainty, and more instability than she could bear to put her daughters through right now. Lily's sleepy voice cut through the air. "Mommy, I don't want to go somewhere scary." Karen squeezed her little hand. "I know, sweetheart." Before she could bring herself to agree to the only option she had left, a voice broke through the conversation. "You're not going to any shelter," a firm, familiar voice said. Karen looked up, startled. Martin Wiss stood in the doorway, his expression set with determination. His wife, Rosa, was beside him, her warm eyes filled with concern. "We'll take them," Rosa said without hesitation. "Come stay with us." Karen blinked in shock. "Oh, I couldn't ask that of you." "You're not asking," Martin said. "We're offering." Rosa stepped forward, kneeling slightly, so she was eye level with Maya and Lily. "We have a big house," she told them gently. "A safe one, and I made a big pot of stew this morning." At the mention of food, Maya and Lily perked up, their tired eyes widening just a little. "Stew?" Maya asked hopefully. "With fresh bread," Rosa added with a wink. Lily tugged at Karen's sleeve. "Mommy, can we go?" Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. They had nowhere else to go. She met Martin's eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation. Instead, she found nothing but certainty. Finally, she nodded, her shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, the words thick with emotion. Rosa reached out, squeezing her hand. "It's settled then. Let's get you all somewhere safe." As they gathered their things, Rosa turned to Sam, who had been watching quietly from the side. "You should join us for dinner too, Sam," she said, her tone motherly. "You must be starving." Sam hesitated, exhaustion pulling at him, but then he saw Maya and Lily both looking at him with wide, pleading eyes. He sighed, shaking his head with a small smile. "All right," he said. "I'll follow you in my car." Lily grinned sleepily, slipping her tiny hand into his as they made their way out of the police station. And just like that, they left behind the nightmare of the last 24 hours, stepping into the unknown, but together. The roads of Pineville were quiet at this hour, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Sam followed closely behind Martin and Rose's car, watching as its taillights flickered red at every turn. In the back seat, he knew Karen sat with Maya and Lily, their small bodies likely curled up against her, exhausted beyond words. The night air was cool, but Sam couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. Something about the way the events of the day had unraveled didn't sit right with him. Darren's so-called friends had vanished. The house had been abandoned in a hurry, and though the police had refused to share what they found inside, Sam knew in his gut that this wasn't over. His fingers drummed idly against the steering wheel as he drove. He had almost convinced himself that he was just being paranoid when he caught something in his rearview mirror. A car. He frowned. That wasn't unusual. Plenty of people were still on the road, even this late. But as he took the next turn, the car turned too. His grip on the wheel tightened. Still, it could have been coincidence. But when Martin slowed slightly in front of him, the car behind him sped up, cutting into the narrow space between their vehicles. Samespalskvikant. Now that it was in front of him, he could see its shape more clearly. It was a dark-colored sedan, no visible markings, no bumper stickers, nothing to distinguish it. Plain, unassuming, forgettable, and yet something about it sent a warning bell ringing in Sam's mind. He squinted, watching how the driver maneuvered. They weren't erratic. They weren't aggressive. They were just there, close enough to be noticeable, close enough to feel intentional. Martin and Rosa turned onto their street, nearing the house. Sam did the same, keeping his eyes locked on the mystery car. It slowed. For a split second, Sam thought it might pull over, that maybe it was just another neighbor arriving home late. But then, just as Rosa's car rolled into the driveway, the sedan kept moving. Slowly, almost too slowly. The headlights drifted past the house, creeping along the curb before finally accelerating down the street. Sam watched it disappear around the corner, his heart hammering against his ribs. Had they been watching? Had they been following him? Or had they been following Karen? He didn't know. What he did know, though, was that his gut never lied to him. Sam quickly reached for his phone and tapped the screen, opening the Notes app. He typed out the first 5 characters of the license plate. It wasn't a full plate, but it was something, just in case. By the time he parked in front of the Wiss's house, his hand was still gripping the wheel, just a little too tightly. He had no proof, no real reason to be alarmed. But he knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a random car on the road. Someone out there was still watching. And that meant the danger wasn't over yet. The warmth of the Wiss home was an immediate contrast to the night air outside. The moment Karen and the girls stepped inside, a visible shift came over them. The exhaustion was still there, clinging to them like a heavy weight, but for the first time in what felt like forever, they were somewhere safe, somewhere that felt like home. Rosa busied herself in the kitchen, reheating the stew she had promised. The rich aroma of simmering broth and freshly baked bread filled the house, wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. Maya and Lily, who had barely spoken during the car ride, now sat at the table, their eyes bright with anticipation. By the time bowls of steaming stew were placed in front of them, their hunger had overridden their exhaustion. They ate quickly, spooning the warm broth into their mouths with the kind of eagerness only children could have after such a long, terrifying day. Karen, seated beside them, rubbed her eyes and let out a slow breath. She still looked drained, but there was something softer in her expression now, something lighter. As the meal went on, conversation drifted in and out, touching on everything except what had happened. It was an unspoken rule at the table. Tonight, at least for these few moments, there would be no fear, no grief, no danger. After dinner, Karen took the girls upstairs to tuck them into bed. Rosa stayed behind, gathering the empty bowls and placing them in the sink. Sam moved to help, but she waved him off with a soft smile. "You sit," she said. "You've done enough for one day." Reluctantly, Sam sank into one of the wooden chairs at the kitchen table. For the first time all day, he let himself exhale fully, the tension in his chest easing just a little. Rosa turned back to him after wiping down the counter. "You don't talk much about yourself, Sam," she said casually, but her tone was warm. Sam chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "Not much to say. I don't believe that for a second," she replied. She poured them both a cup of tea before settling into the seat across from him. A man who risks his own safety for a woman and two little girls he barely knows? There's a story there. Sam hesitated, staring into the dark liquid in his cup. He hadn't talked about it in a long time. Not really, but something about Rosa, the way she listened, the way she didn't pry but still understood, made him feel like he could. "I lost my wife a few years ago," he finally admitted. Rosa's expression softened, but she didn't speak, letting him continue. It was sudden. He swallowed, forcing himself to keep his voice steady. "After that, it was just me. I threw myself into work. Kept busy. It was easier that way." Rosa nodded knowingly. "And the girls remind you of what you lost, don't they?" Sam blinked. He hadn't expected her to say it so bluntly. But she wasn't wrong. Maya and Lily, their innocence, their resilience, it reminded him of the family he had dreamed of once. A future that had been stolen from him. Maybe, he admitted, or maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of something happening to them when I had the chance to stop it. Rosa smiled softly, reaching over to pat his hand. "Well, whatever your reasons, I'm grateful. And so is Karen." Sam wasn't sure what to say to that. Before the silence could stretch too long, Karen reappeared, her hair slightly disheveled from the twins' enthusiastic goodnight hugs. She looked at them with a tired but grateful expression. "They're asleep," she murmured, rubbing her arms as though trying to chase away a lingering chill. "I think it finally caught up with them." "Good," Rosa said. "They need rest." Karen nodded, but as she stepped closer, her expression changed. Something was still weighing on her. Sam saw it immediately and knew it wasn't just exhaustion. After a moment, she finally spoke. "Sam, something's bothering you, isn't it?" Rosa looked between them, her brow furrowing. "Bothering him?" Sam sighed, setting his tea down. He hadn't meant to bring it up, but now that it was out in the open, there was no point in hiding it. "There was a car following us on the way here." Karen stiffened. Rosa's eyes widened slightly. "I'm not sure if I was just being paranoid," he admitted, rubbing his jaw. "But it got between us, slowed down in front of the house, then just drove away." Silence settled over the kitchen. Rosa's hands tightened around her cup, while Karen's face paled just slightly. Martin, who had been quietly listening from the next room, stepped into the doorway. "You got a plate number?" Sam nodded. "Not the full thing, but I wrote down the first few characters." Martin frowned, rubbing his chin. "I'll take a look outside, just in case." Karen wrapped her arms around herself. "You think it was Darren's friends?" Sam exhaled, shaking his head. "I don't know." And that was the truth. He had no idea who it had been. But whoever they weren't just some lost driver looking for directions. Martin checked the front yard, the street, the parked cars along the curb. But when he returned a few minutes later, he shook his head. Nothing. Streets empty. Rosa let out a breath, relief flickering across her face. Maybe it was nothing then. But none of them really believed that. "I still think we should be careful," Sam said. "Just in case." Martin nodded. Agreed. The night was quieter after that, but the unease never really faded. After another half hour, Sam finally stood, stretching. His exhaustion was beginning to win. "I should head out," he said, glancing at the clock. "Got an early meeting in the morning." Karen followed him to the door, her expression hesitant. "You sure you don't want to stay?" For a second, he considered it. But if something really was going on, it wouldn't help for all of them to be in one place. "I'll be fine," he reassured her. "But if anything feels off, don't hesitate to call me." She nodded, though she still looked uncertain. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." He offered a small smile. "Get some rest, Karen. You need it." With that, he stepped outside, inhaling the cool night air as he made his way to his car. The drive back was quiet. Too quiet. The streets were almost completely empty, but every now and then, he found himself glancing at his mirrors, half expecting to see headlights trailing behind him. He pulled into his apartment complex, letting out a slow breath. But as he parked, a small prickle of unease settled in his chest again. Something was off. The security guard, the one who was always stationed at the entrance, was missing. His usual booth was dark empty. Sam frowned, scanning the lot. The building was still locked up. There were no signs of forced entry, no disturbances. Nothing obvious. Maybe the guard was inside. Maybe he had stepped away. Maybe Sam was just on edge after everything that had happened. But as he made his way up to his apartment, something inside him whispered a warning. He was too tired to deal with it now. But tomorrow, he'd have to start looking for answers. The shrill beeping of Sam's alarm cut through the early morning stillness, dragging him from the depths of exhaustion. His limbs felt leaden, his mind sluggish, as he forced himself upright. The red digits on the clock glowed, 6:30 a.m. Not nearly enough sleep, but he had a meeting to get to. With a groan, he swung his legs over the side of the bed and rubbed the sleep from his eyes. Every muscle ached from the tension of the previous day. He wasn't just tired. He was worn down, as if the weight of everything that had happened had finally caught up to him. But there was no time to dwell on it. He moved through his morning routine on autopilot, showering, throwing on a fresh uniform, grabbing his keys. As he stepped out of his apartment, he took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, willing himself to focus on the normal things. A work meeting, a routine drive, a regular day, or at least, that's what he told himself. The parking lot was quiet, the early morning light casting long shadows across the pavement. His car sat in its usual spot, exactly where he had left it. But something felt off. It was subtle, just a whisper in the back of his mind, an itch he couldn't quite scratch. He scanned the lot, his eyes drifting toward the security booth. It was still empty. No sign of the guard who was always there, rain or shine. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the unease settling in his chest. He was overthinking. Not everything was a conspiracy. Sliding into the driver's seat, he started the engine, relieved when it rumbled to life without issue. Maybe he really was being paranoid. He backed out of his spot and pulled onto the road, heading toward the USPS facility. The morning traffic was light, the sun barely beginning to crest over the buildings. He focused on the drive, pushing away the lingering tension. And then it happened. A sputter, a jerk beneath the hood. Sam frowned, tightening his grip on the wheel. "Come on, not today," he muttered, pressing down on the gas pedal. The engine stuttered again, a horrible, choking sound rattling through the frame of the car. His stomach twisted. Another sputter. Then, a sudden loss of power. The car lurched forward, then died completely. Sam's breath caught in his throat as he quickly steered toward the shoulder of the road, barely making it before the vehicle rolled to a complete stop. Silence. He sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, his pulse pounding in his ears. This wasn't right. The car had been fine last night. It wasn't new, but it wasn't unreliable. There had been no warning signs. Frowning, he reached for the ignition and tried again. The engine whined, but didn't turn over. Then, the smell hit him. Gasoline. His eyes widened as he unbuckled his seatbelt and shoved open the door. The second his feet hit the pavement, he crouched down, peering beneath the car. His stomach dropped. A dark puddle of fuel had formed beneath the vehicle, the acrid scent thick in the air. A leak. A bad one. Sam's mind raced. This wasn't an accident. Fuel lines didn't just snap overnight. They didn't sever themselves. Someone had done this on purpose. His heartbeat hammered as he took a slow step back, scanning the street. The morning rush hadn't started yet. There were only a few passing cars, none of them familiar. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his fingers tightening around it. His instincts screamed at him, every alarm in his brain firing at once. This was connected to last night, to the car that had followed them. And whoever had done this had wanted to make sure he didn't get where he was going. Taking a deep breath, he dialed 911. When the operator answered, he forced his voice to stay even, controlled. "This is Sam Parker. I need to report a possible case of vehicle sabotage." A pause. "Sabotage, sir? My fuel line's been cut," he said, glancing at the growing puddle beneath his car. "And I think someone's been following me." Another pause. Then, the operator's voice came back, this time more alert. "Stay where you are, Mr. Parker. We're sending an officer to your location now." Sam ended the call, gripping the phone in his palm as his eyes swept the street again. Whoever had done this had wanted him stranded. The question was, why? The morning sun had barely climbed over the horizon when the police cruiser pulled up behind Sam's disabled car. The officer, a young man with a serious expression, stepped out, adjusting his belt as he approached. "Mr. Parker?" Sam nodded, his pulse still pounding. "Yeah, I'm Officer Thompson." The cop introduced himself, his eyes already sweeping over the scene. "Dispatch said you reported a fuel line issue." Sam exhaled, gesturing to the dark puddle beneath his car. "Not an issue. Sabotage." The officer crouched down, examining the pooling gasoline. Before he could say anything, a tow truck pulled up alongside them. The mechanic, a burly man in stained coveralls, hopped out and gave Sam a nod before sliding under the car. A few tense moments passed as the man worked. Sam's hands clenched at his sides, his instincts screaming that something was very, very wrong. Then, the mechanic grunted, his voice muffled as he called out from beneath the car. "Yeah, this wasn't wear and tear." Sam's stomach tightened. The mechanic slid out, wiping grease off his hands. "Line's been cut clean through. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Officer Thompson's jaw clenched. That's not something you see every day. He straightened, reaching for the radio on his shoulder. "I'll need to check the security footage at your apartment complex. See if we could get a look at whoever was lurking around your car last night." Sam nodded, though he barely heard him. His mind was racing, already connecting the dots. Someone had wanted him off the road. Had they been trying to delay him? Or were they hoping his car would go up in flames the second he turned the ignition? He didn't get the chance to dwell on the thought. The officer's radio crackled to life. "All units, be advised. Missing child report from Willow Creek. Suspected abduction at residence of Martin and Rosa Wiss." Sam's heart stopped. The Wiss house. His breath caught in his throat, his entire body locking up. Not them. Not the girls. Officer Thompson stiffened, his hand flying back to his radio. "Confirm the victims?" The voice on the other end came through, firm but urgent. "2 children, both female, last seen in their home early this morning. Maya and Lily." Sam's blood ran cold. Without thinking, he spun on his heel, already scanning the road for any passing vehicles. "Mr. Parker," the officer called after him. "I need you to stay here while we investigate." "I don't have time for that," Sam snapped, throwing his arm out as a taxi approached from the end of the block. He waved it down frantically, relief flooding through him as the driver slowed to a stop. The window rolled down. "Need a ride?" Sam yanked open the door. "Willow Creek. Now." The driver didn't hesitate, sensing the urgency in his voice. The tires screeched against the pavement as they pulled away. Sam barely registered the scenery flying past. His mind was a whirlwind of panic and rage. Who had taken them? Darren's so-called friends? The same people who had fled from the old house the night before? Or was it someone else entirely? The Wiss house had felt safe. It had been a sanctuary. Sam had tucked those girls in last night, believing they were out of harm's way. And now, he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay focused. Then, something outside the window caught his attention. A car. Not just any car. A dark-colored sedan, parked outside a hardware store. Sam's heart pounded. It looked too familiar. "Stop the car," he barked. The taxi driver shot him a confused look. "What?" "Stop the damn car." The tires screeched as they skidded to a stop along the curb. Sam was out of the vehicle before it had even fully stopped, his feet hitting the pavement in a dead sprint toward the parked sedan. As he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. Through the tinted back window, he could make out the faintest outline of 2 small figures, huddled together. Maya and Lily. His blood boiled. They were locked inside, and their kidnappers were still nearby. Sam's pulse pounded in his ears as he crept toward the dark sedan, his breath tight in his chest. The street outside the hardware store was quiet, the early morning rush still a while away. But inside that car, he could see them, Maya and Lily. His gut clenched. Their small bodies were huddled together in the back seat, their faces barely visible through the tinted glass. Were they awake? Were they hurt? Then he heard it, a muffled cry, coming from inside the trunk. His stomach dropped. The girls weren't just inside the car. They were trapped. He rushed forward, pressing his ear against the metal. His heart pounded as he listened. Soft sobs. A tiny voice, frantic, desperate. Sam, is that you? Lily. Relief and fury surged through him at the same time. He had to get them out. Fumbling with one hand, he yanked out his phone and dialed 911. The second the dispatcher answered, his words spilled out in a rush. "I've found them. The missing girls from Willow Creek. They're locked in the trunk of a car outside the Pineville hardware store." The dispatcher's tone shifted immediately. "Are they hurt?" "I don't know. I can hear them, but the trunk is locked." His grip on the phone tightened. "I need officers here now." "We're sending units to your location," the dispatcher assured him. "Do not engage with any suspects." Too late for that, because just as he turned, he saw them. Two men exiting the hardware store, carrying a box filled with tools and supplies. They froze the second they saw Sam. And Sam knew, without a doubt, these were the men who had taken the girls. For a split second, the world stood still. Then, rage flared in his chest, white-hot and blinding. Without thinking, he jabbed a finger toward them, his voice ringing through the quiet street. Those men kidnapped the children. The bystanders nearby, three men who had been loading up their own truck, whipped around at the sound of his voice. The kidnappers' faces twisted in panic. Then they ran. One darted to the left, bolting toward the alley behind the store. The other made a break for the driver's side of the sedan, probably to drive away before the police arrived. Not happening. Sam lunged forward, his adrenaline overriding any exhaustion he had felt just minutes ago. The bystanders, strangers a moment ago, sprang into action. Two of them chased after the man fleeing down the alley, their footsteps pounding against the pavement. The third, a tall, burly guy with a thick beard, stepped in front of the sedan's driver's side door, blocking the other kidnapper from escaping. The man trying to get in the car whirled, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "Give me the keys," Sam growled, stepping closer. The kidnapper's fingers twitched toward his jacket. Sam knew that move. The guy had a weapon. Before he could think, Sam lunged, slamming into him with all the force he had. They crashed against the side of the car, the impact rattling through Sam's bones. The keys clattered to the ground. A second later, the burly bystander grabbed the kidnapper by the collar, yanking him backward. "You're not going anywhere." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Sam scrambled for the keys, his hands shaking as he jammed the correct one into the lock. The trunk popped open. Inside, Maya and Lily lay curled up together, their faces streaked with tears. Sam barely had time to react before they launched themselves into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "I got you," he whispered, holding them close. "I've got you. You're safe now." Red and blue lights flashed across the pavement as police cars screeched to a stop around them. Officers poured out, guns drawn, shouting commands as they took control of the scene. The kidnappers never stood chance. As the officers dragged the men away in cuffs, Sam looked down at the two little girls in his arms, their small bodies trembling against him. And he silently vowed no one would ever take them again. The second the first kidnapper bolted, the chase was on. Sam didn't hesitate. His legs burned as he sprinted after the man, dodging trash cans and broken pavement as they tore through a narrow alley behind the hardware store. Footsteps thundered behind him. One of the bystanders had joined the pursuit, his heavy breathing matching Sam's own. The kidnapper was fast, but desperation had made Sam faster. The alley was tight, the towering brick walls offering no escape. The man lunged for a stack of wooden pallets, trying to climb over them, but Sam was right there, grabbing the back of his jacket and yanking him down. The kidnapper spun around, his face contorted with rage. Then Sam saw the glint of metal. A knife. Sam barely had time to react before the man swung. He ducked just in time, the blade missing his chest by inches. Adrenaline roared through his veins, every nerve on high alert. "Stay back," the kidnapper snarled, his hands shaking around the weapon. "I swear I'll—" But Sam wasn't listening. He wasn't thinking anymore. He charged. The man barely had time to process what was happening before Sam slammed into him at full force, knocking him off balance. The knife clattered to the ground, skidding across the alley. The kidnapper thrashed, but Sam held on, grappling him onto the pavement. The bystander who had followed jumped in, helping pin the man down. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder, closer. "Stay down," Sam growled, pressing his knee into the man's back as he struggled. "It's over." Flashing red and blue lights washed over the alley. Hands where we can see them. Police officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Within seconds, the man was yanked off the ground and thrown into cuffs. Sam rolled onto his knees, his chest heaving as he finally let go. His hands were shaking. His breath came in ragged gasps. But he wasn't thinking about himself. He stumbled to his feet and sprinted back toward the hardware store, toward the car. The police had already surrounded the sedan. The second he arrived, an officer unlocked the trunk. The moment it opened, two tiny figures shot out. Sam, Maya, and Lily flew into his arms, their sobs muffled against his shirt. Sam wrapped them up tightly. His throat closing as relief crashed over him like a tidal wave. "I got you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I got you." More officers arrived, pulling the second kidnapper from the car. The crowd of bystanders had grown, murmuring in shock as the men were dragged away in handcuffs. But Sam barely noticed. All he cared about was the two little girls clutching onto him like he was the only safe place in the world. And he wasn't letting go. The police station buzzed with tension as officers moved swiftly through the corridors. Phones hung. Voices carried through the halls. But in one small interrogation room, a truth more twisted than any of them had expected was beginning to unravel. Sam stood near the doorway, arms crossed, exhaustion weighing him down like an anchor. He should have felt relief. The girls were safe. The kidnappers were in custody. It should have been over, but it wasn't. Across the table, two men in handcuffs sat under the harsh fluorescent lights, their faces hardened but cracking under the pressure. Malvin, the one Sam had tackled, leaned forward, his jaw clenched. The other man, thinner and twitchier, stared at the floor as if hoping it would swallow him whole. Detective Roberts, a seasoned officer with tired eyes, leaned over the table. His voice was low, controlled. "Start talking." The thinner man exhaled sharply, rubbing a cuffed wrist against his knee. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," he muttered. "Not like this." Robert's stare remained ice cold. "Then explain. What was it supposed to be?" The man swallowed. His leg bounced beneath the table. Then, finally, he talked. Darren Dorson had hired them. Sam's breath caught in his chest as the words left the man's mouth. Karen, who had been sitting stiffly beside the detective, flinched. The confession poured out like poison. Darren had planned everything. He had wanted to disappear, to fake his own death, to erase Karen's existence completely. He had paid them, Malvin and his men, to handle everything. Destroy Karen's documents. Strip away her identity. Make it so that legally she never existed. And the girls? Darren had planned to take them with him, to start over somewhere else. Alone. Karen's breath hitched as she shook her head, as if trying to physically reject the words. "No," she whispered. "That can't be true. He was their father." Malvin laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Oh, sweetheart, you really never knew him, did you?" Sam took a step forward, his fists clenching. "Watch how you talk to her." Malvin didn't care. His lips curled into a smirk, his cuffed hands resting casually on the table. Darren didn't want to be a husband anymore. He didn't even want to be a father. He just wanted control. And when he realized he could rewrite his life without you, his smirk widened. "Well, you became inconvenient." Karen's hands trembled in her lap. She was barely holding it together. But Malvin wasn't finished. Darren got himself killed before he could finish the job. He continued, leaning back. And without him, we were left with a problem. Robert's eyes darkened. "And that's when you decided to take the girls yourselves." Malvin's smirk faded. We didn't get paid, detective. He was supposed to give us the rest of the money after he disappeared. His voice turned cold, so we decided to cut our losses. If we couldn't hand the girls over to him, well, there were others willing to pay. Karen gasped, the reality of what he was saying sinking into her like a knife. They had planned to sell Maya and Lily, like they were nothing. Sam's vision blurred with fury. His entire body burned with the need to put Malvin back in the dirt where he belonged. But then Malvin did something that made his rage boil over. He laughed. "Relax, Parker," he said, his voice almost mocking. "You got the back, didn't you?" Sam lanat. The chair he had been standing behind clattered to the ground as he slammed his hands on the table, leaning in close. His voice was low, dangerous. "If I ever see your face again," he whispered, "you won't be sitting in a police station." Malvin's smirk wavered. Sam didn't blink. Neither did Roberts. "That's enough," the detective said, his tone even. He turned to Malvin and his accomplice. "You're both going away for a long time." The officers dragged them from the room, their cuffs rattling as they were hauled to their holding cells. Silence filled the space they left behind. Karen sat frozen, her body shaking, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Sam took a slow breath, forcing his rage down as he turned to her. "Karen," he said gently, kneeling beside her chair. "Look at me." She did, and in her eyes, he saw everything. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the unbearable weight of the truth. "My whole marriage," her voice cracked. "It was a lie." Sam hesitated. Then, carefully, he reached for her hand. "No," he said. "Your marriage wasn't a lie. Darren was." Tears slid silently down her face. "You and the girls," Sam continued, his grip firm, grounding her. "You're still here. He didn't erase you, Karen. He didn't take them from you. And he never will." Her lips trembled, but this time she nodded. The nightmare was over, but the healing was only beginning. As the station staff finalized their reports, Rosa and Martin arrived, wrapping Karen in a hug so tight that she nearly collapsed into them. Maya and Lily were there too, still shaken but safe. Sam stepped back, watching the family cling to each other. He had never imagined himself in their lives. He had never thought that one simple delivery, one small, frantic message scribbled on a package, could lead to this moment. Karen pulled away from Rosa, turning to Sam. And then she hugged him too. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just relief. It was a silent promise that no matter how broken their lives had become, they would never face it alone. The sun had fully risen by the time they left the police station, casting a warm golden glow over the quiet streets of Pineville. But for Sam Parker, nothing felt the same. As he sat in the passenger seat of Martin's car, staring out at the passing scenery, his mind played back every moment of the past 24 hours. It felt surreal, like a lifetime compressed into a single day. Yesterday, he had been just a regular mail carrier, doing his job, delivering packages. Today, he was something else entirely. A hero, they had called him, but he didn't feel like one. He felt lucky. Lucky that he had noticed the note, lucky that he had trusted his gut, lucky that he had found the girls before it was too late. Karen sat in the back seat with Maya and Lily, her arms wrapped tightly around them. They had finally stopped trembling, finally let exhaustion take over. Maya had her head resting against Karen's shoulder, her tiny fingers curled into her mother's sleeve. Lily, still clutching the stuffed rabbit an officer had given her, was already asleep. Sam let out a quiet breath. They were safe. That was all that mattered. Rosa, seated beside him, glanced at him thoughtfully. "You haven't said much." Sam shrugged, running a hand through his hair. "Not much to say." Rosa smiled knowingly. "That's not true." Martin, keeping his eyes on the road, let out a chuckle. "Come on, son. You just saved 2 kids, helped take down a criminal operation, and uncover a conspiracy. You really don't have any thoughts about that." Sam hesitated. Then, with a small smirk, he shook his head. "Didn't see that on my delivery route this morning." Martin laughed, and even Rosa chuckled softly. But as the humor faded, Sam's mind drifted back to the reality of it all. Darren Dorson had tried to erase his own wife. He had been willing to steal his own children away from her, to start over, to pretend she never existed. And when his plan had fallen apart, his so-called friends had turned on him, deciding that selling 2 innocent little girls was an easier payday. It made Sam's blood boil just thinking about it. But then, he looked back at Karen, who sat with her daughters in her arms, holding on to them like she would never let go. Because she never would. And he knew that Darren had lost. As the Wiss house came into view, Sam finally allowed himself to exhale. The nightmare was over. But his life? It would never be the same. He had walked into this thinking he was just delivering a package. Instead, he had delivered justice. He had delivered hope. And as he stepped out of the car, listening to the soft murmurs of Karen and the girls behind him, he knew one thing for certain. His role in this family story was far from over. And that, my friends, is the incredible story of how one simple delivery changed everything. A routine day turned into a fight for survival, a battle against deception, and a race to save 2 innocent lives. Sam Parker never expected to be a hero, but sometimes the smallest actions, a second glance, a gut feeling, a single note, can make all the difference. Thank you for listening to this story. If it kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another thrilling tale. And remember, sometimes heroes come from the most unexpected places. See you in the next story.